Hello everybody, this is Kiyoshi here and welcome back to another episode of the Kiyoshi's Aquarium. In today's episode, we'll be talking about floating plants. So without further ado, let's get started. We'll have a couple things to discuss. We'll talk about the pros, the cons, and different types of floating plants, and my thoughts on those plants. I currently do not have any floating plants in any of my aquariums. However, in my entire aquarium hobby, I have been like growing red roots floaters, frobics, hornworth, and duckweed in the past for maybe 3 to 4 years straight. And I used to love floating plants a lot, and I will get into details why I don't have them anymore. First, let's talk about the pros. Of course, not frobic, all floating plants looks beautiful. You know, it adds a different layer of status to your aquarium, especially if you do not want to use a lid and you have jumping fish. Floating plants does help, secure your fish underneath the water. And also just for the look of your aquarium with floating plants, it looks just an actual layer of beauty, especially when the plants grow really healthy. The roots extends to the mid waterways, and that adds the entire atmosphere just so calm, soft, and beautiful. We have different type of floating plants. um I will only mention four of those because those are the four that I have grown myself. And those are red root floaters, frobic, hornworth, and duckweed. They're all fairly easy to grow except red root floater. I will discuss that in a minute. Let's talk about frobic. Frobics were one of my favorites. I used to grow that in all of my tanks because they have fairly larger leaves at the same time, not like huge leaves, and they're fairly very easy. They don't require much attention, to be honest with you, and that they sucks all the nitrates, the bad stuff from your aquarium to make your aquarium parameter great. And also shrimps and small fish loves them, especially shrimp. They will always, chilling underneath the roots, or sometimes even eating on the small particles on it. Frobics reproduce very easy as long as you have very calm water. If your water is very calm, meaning the filtration system, the filter is very weak, just do not have very strong flow, these frobics should grow very fast, and the leaves should grow like big as well, and they just reproduce like crazy. Once in a while, you probably have to clean up and throw a bunch of those stuff, or give it away, or add it to your other tanks, because it's just gonna be a mess. If it's everything's great. Frobic enjoys a bit of light, however, make sure the light is not too strong, because it will also melt, from my experience. And also, as with all floating plants in general, they do not like to get their leaves wet. So make sure you have very calm water surface that will ensure your fabric grows healthy and strong. And then hornworth, it's like a mid-range floating plant. You don't have to bury it anywhere in a substrate. Just get like a piece of hornworth, and then just leave it in the water, and then it will just become a centerpiece of a green bushy looking plant in your aquarium. And apparently hornworth is really good for like fries, especially if you're breeding fish, or what is it called, shrimps love them. Just a lot of shy fish love them as well, because that create kind of like a maze effect. And I used to have hornworth in my what is that fish called clonkillies. I used to have a clonkillie tank, and I use a lot of hornworth, and then there's cherry shrimp underneath. They all love it. It's great. Yeah, if you don't want to invest in any plants, or if you're like really beginner, you don't know what's a good plant to start with, just use hornworth. That hornworth grows really fast, and then it'll take over the tank like no tomorrow. Yeah, it's pretty much like guppy grass. They just adds a different layer of jungle-ish feeling to your aquarium. It's great. Last, it's I mean not last, duckweed. I think we all have heard duckweed. Duckweed is easy, tiny. They're annoying sometimes. I will talk about that in the cons. However, duckweed is very easy to grow, very tiny particles, and as we all heard, once you have duckweed in your tank, you will almost impossible to get rid of it. That's how strong and how powerful duckweed is, and how low maintenance duckweed is. Last, red roof floaters. These, in my opinion, is probably the hardest floating plant out of all of the four that I'm talking about, that I talked in this series. First of all, it does require a bit more iron or a bit more nutrients in your water, because unless you're fine with your red roof floater just stay green, if you want it to turn into red, that beautiful lavish red, you do have to have iron and a bit other nutrients in the water. And also, if the lighting is not good, if it gets wet on the leaf, they will just melt away. So yeah, in my opinion, I wasn't having a great success in raising in having a red roof floater in my aquarium. I used to have that in my betta 5-gallon betta tank. However, it wasn't really successful. What I call by not successful is, I guess I wasn't really doing a lot of the nutrients to it, so it stays green all year. It just never turned red. And the reason I want to get that is because I want that red, lavish red on the leaves, but it never happened. It never flowers too, so I think it's lacking. And then at the end, I haven't been taking care of it for a while, and I had a like a heavy light spotting on it, like for like a couple of weeks. They just start to melt away. And then yeah, so those are the 4 plans that I have had experience and my thoughts on those. Talking about the cons, duckweed, as I already mentioned it, duckweed, once you have it, it's very difficult to get rid of it. So do think twice before you adding duckweed to your tank. They do look nice, however duckweeds are very small as well, so unless you have fish that usually we eat it, usually I find it pretty useless, because shrimps are smaller fry, they can't really hide or utilize duckweed in a way. It's only for like shading, shading purposes. Maybe there are algae in your tank, you want to use floating plants to kill all those algae, that works. Or just for the general soft status of the tank, maybe, yeah. But otherwise, I don't really recommend duckweed. They're just very invasive species in general. And do be careful if you want to get rid of duckweed. Do not flush that in the toilet. Do not flush that in the dryage. That will contaminate the water system in your county, country, state, city, whatever. Hornworth, I love Hornworth, especially if if you're a beginner, you do not, or you're just lazy, you want a very low budget, empty tank. You don't want to do aquascape. I think throw Hornworth in your tank, let it just grow, and like crazy, it will become like an Amazonia very quick. That is the pro. The con is, once Hornworth take over your tank, really, your aquascape just gonna be messed up. You won't be able to see much other than Hornworth, because it's just gonna be very, very long roots with a lot of different new leaves and all that. And the other con is, the reason I no longer grow Hornworth is when once Hornworth dies, they will start turning yellowish. The greens are the fresh newborns, and the dying ones will start turning yellowish. And at the end, Hornworth's leaves, it's more like needles, like very soft needles shaped. They will start falling off, and then, especially if your Hornworth start to die, like more and more, and you don't take care of your aquarium, like you're lazy, you just let it be as it is. Maybe a week later, you go back to your tank, you will see all these little needle looking leaves falling down everywhere in your tank. And when you use siphon to suck it out, it's actually very difficult, with those needles, because they're not like leaf shapes or tiny like particles from the food leftovers. It's all these like needle shaped leaves. So that gets kind of annoying, especially if you want to have a tank looking like beautiful. Hornworth would be troublesome once it dies, it just kind of, you know, have a lot of those fallen needle-like leaves. So that's one reason why I don't have it anymore. And Frolic, I love Frolic. If I can have Frolic again, I would. However, from my experience, Frolic is not best when you have a lid on top, for various reasons. First, you know, the water coming from the lid may drop onto the leaf, and then they might just die. And or the light condition, if it's too dim, too strong, it's not really good for it. And the nutrient level in the water, if your water is, you know, have high bioloads, maybe it's good. But if it has very low bioloads, very low nutrients for it to grow, it might not be the best to growing frolic. But Frobit is very easy to grow though. But the con things that I experience is, once again, if you're lazy, you don't want to do your normal maintenance or water change, especially you have a fully cycled tank, very mature tank for years. Usually what people do is just once the water evaporates, you just kind of top it off with new water. That's usually what people do when you know when you have a very stable, larger size aquarium. But what you will find is frog will grow over the entire tank, and your other plants underneath, the water surface cannot get enough light unless you have a super strong expensive light. Those plants that do require attentions will start to die. So whether it's worth it to have Frolic versus all those, you know, hardscapes that you have underneath the tank, it's your choice. It's for me, you know, like I said at the beginning, in your hobby, you might be very proactive into your aquascaping, water changing, you know, taking care of a tank. As time progresses, everything settles, your life gets busy, you probably, you know, wouldn't really pay attention to the tank, and maybe once a week or once a month. That's when you do your maintenance. And it happens so quickly that a month later, when your frolic take over the entire tank, and you notice all your plant underneath starts to die. You know, especially those plant do require a lot of photosynthesis. So that is the reason why I don't get frolic anymore. And also, like I mentioned, I prefer putting a lid on top of my aquarium versus let it just open with, you know, I understand how beautiful folding plants are, but for the safety of my fish, and especially I have pets at home, you don't want them to just randomly, you know, dig their tongue into the water and just drink it out of it, or, you know, playing with a fish or having the fish just somehow jump out, which I have that experience in the past too, having a fish jump out in front of my eye. So yeah, I will never let that happen again. Therefore, lid over, you know, floating plant, I choose the lid. Last, red root floater. As I mentioned, red root floaters are very difficult to grow. If you want to grow it very good, I think that's not like a beginner friendly kind of floating plant. There are so many beginner friendly floating plants to choose from. Red root floater is definitely the medium level one. Like I said, you can get it to grow. However, to make it, like to turn it into lavish red, you do have to have some sort of substrate, nutrients, whatever, you know, iron in the water. And yeah, at the time I was growing it, I was just not into that. And yeah, so it was never, I never achieved what I wanted to achieve. So those are my thoughts on the folding plants. Once again, do your research, you know, always do your research. Folding plants are great for their reasons, and also they're bad for certain reasons that I cover in this video. I hope this is helpful, and I will talk to you guys in the next video then. Bye bye.